Hello. In this episode, we are going to talk about ways to curate the most badass version of you and proven ways to activate this inner baddie as often as needed in order to create the results in your life and business that you know you could be. Not that you should, but you could. All right. So this is a strategy that I actually do myself. It really works. And this is just a fun conversation. So let's go. Welcome to All In with Ali podcast, the podcast for entrepreneurs and online business owners who are ready to create the life and business of their dreams. I'm so happy you are here. So, what is an archetype? That's essentially what we're talking about. When we think about, or when I say, ways to curate the most badass version of you. And by the way, any kind of version of you. This could be a feminine, like the most feminine version of you, the most loving, the sexiest, the most badass, the most fearless. It can be anything. And you can have as many of these as you want. But what I'm talking about when I say that, I'm talking about archetypes. I'm talking about alter egos here. That's essentially like when I hear archetype, I think of alter ego. It's a set of personality traits or a vibe or a frequency that we all have access to. It's somewhere in us. It just needs to be activated. And I have found that when I think of this in the way that we're going to talk about it today on this episode, it just makes more sense to me and I'm able to do it for myself really well. So when I think of archetypes or alter egos, I always think of Beyonce's Sasha Fierce. So I don't know if you've heard this, but apparently her alter ego, Beyonce's alter ego is called Sasha Fierce. So anytime she's performing or needs to be the Beyonce, she activates this version of her that she has named something else. It's not her, right? It's like this alter ego that she's curated over the years, the one who hits every single note and every single dance move and, is just like so tapped into her power and just does the damn thing on stage, totally fearless, not concerned how many people are looking at her or hating on her or whatever. She's just Sasha freaking Fierce, which has created the Beyonce that we all know and love today. If you're a fan of her, I personally am. So that's what I think of. And again, we all can do this for ourselves. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how we can curate our own alter egos or archetypes that can assist us in the different areas of life and goals and different things that we want to continue to create and grow in our lives. So we're going to talk about how to curate those, but most importantly, how to activate them, because that's super important. You can curate and get clear all day on the type of personality traits and frequencies and vibes that you wish you could access more often in order to do or be more of blank. But if you don't know how to activate these things within you, it's not going to do you much good. So we'll talk about ways that I have found are helpful in order to activate my own inner whatever it is that I'm trying to activate and why we want to do this in the first place. So let's get started with the why part, right? Why are we even having this conversation? So I've always joked that I feel like I personally have many different versions of me. And yes, cue multiple personality joke here. Not that I'm making fun of that, but we get it. There's different versions of me. There's there's like the mom version of me, and then there's the wife version of me, and then there's the lazy version of me, and there's a fearful version of me, and then there's like definitely a badass version of me, and there's the uber healthy version of me, right? Like depending on the day and the circumstance and whatever will dictate what version of me you get. And that's all fine and good, but when I'm wanting to be intentional, especially in my business, and I'm wanting to consistently put myself out there and, create certain levels of results, I need to be more intentional about the version of me that I'm putting out into the world. So that's, for you may experience something similar. There's probably many different archetypes that you can activate and that you can bring forward at any time. And you may be at a certain level of results. They're like, okay, this is great. I love my life. I'm thankful for my life, but there's still this level that I haven't quite gotten to yet. And the answer, of course, isn't, well, that's not available to you and you can't have it. The answer is it's absolutely available to you, but we've got to match the frequency of that thing, right? You've got to become and be the type of person that gets those types of results. Who is she? How does she move? What decisions does she make? What actions and, how does she take the actions? She's in you. She's just got to be brought forward. Okay. So that's why this practice and this conversation could be super beneficial, because to me, it almost like gamifies the experience. It's really easy to kind of get into like the victim version of yourself and be like, oh man, I wish I could be more like blah, blah, blah. But, I can't because she's more confident than me and I'm not, or she's more of this and I'm not. And it's like, that's not true. You just need to cultivate that version of you. Not saying that we need to be like other people or be other people. We just want to, again, take those personality attributes and that vibe, whatever the thing is that you admire and that you think is getting that person the thing, and you need to apply it and put it forward yourself. So one example of one way that I did this before I even realized what it was that I was doing, I'm going to take you back to the very beginning of my business. So when I first started this business, it was when people really started getting comfortable and people were starting to use Instagram for business purposes, right? So a lot more brands and a lot more businesses were growing and growing rapidly on Instagram. And this is about the time that I was building my own brand on Instagram. And this is also when stories were relatively new, and also Instagram and all other platforms were starting to favor more video. They wanted you to do more lives. They wanted you to put out more video. Like, do you remember IGTV on Instagram? I think this was before then, but like that was about to be a thing. But video was like starting to rise as the type of content that it was becoming necessary, right? Like you couldn't, it was getting to the point that if you genuinely wanted to grow on platforms like Instagram, you had to be utilizing video. Otherwise the algorithm was just going to screw you over. Well, that's all great. But at the time I was deathly afraid of video. I hated it. I would record something a million different times, watch it over and cry. I hated how I sounded. I hated how I looked. Just everything about it made me cringe and just crumble. And I was like, I cannot do this. I'm not like, I've got a face for radio, it just was not working for me. But the problem was that really wasn't an option at the time. Like, I didn't have a podcast yet. And I've already explained, like, it's kind of what you had to do. And I knew that this was holding me back. So for me to be able to get over myself and be the type of person that not only put out video, but did so consistently and in a way that, wasn't totally making me miserable, I needed to activate a different level of myself. So I kind of crafted this version of myself who was more of like the creator. This was like my first iteration of the badass version of me who just did what she had to do, right? There wasn't a lot of thinking about it. There wasn't time to overthink. It was what it was. There was an action that needed to be taken. You need to go and you take the action. And that's just kind of what I had to do and what I started to do. And what I found was the more that I activated this part of me, the more that I became that part of me, right? Like the more that it became easy, it became more second nature. I just wasn't practiced at doing those type of things in that type of way. But the more that I did, the more that it became more of who I genuinely was, if that makes sense. So this has been such a useful tool. And again, I use this to this day. I have different, I guess, archetypes, and they're not all named. Like you hear people, like we just had Tara Marino come on the podcast and she talked about the archetypes in her business. Like she has the Frenchie and she has the New Yorker and the Indie. My mentor, Melanie, she teaches about different archetypes. And I actually think the badass might be one of them now that I think about it. So mine aren't necessarily named, but they're just parts of me that when I need to activate them, I activate them, even if it's not second nature. It's just the thing that needs to be done, right? So how do we craft this version of you? All right. So this could be something like if you wanted to get out a pen and paper, you could do this, or you could come back to this later, or you can just be thinking in your head, like if you needed or wanted to create some sort of new alter ego for yourself, what would this be? So I think it would be really cool first, before we curate the alter ego, let's first think about like, what is that next level for you? Is there something that maybe you know that you should be doing in your business, but you're not because of fear or because of laziness or because of whatever the situation is? Is there maybe a level of life and business or something that you want to be better at or you want to excel more in, but you're just not like at the standard version of you? We all have the version of us that show up the most, right? Like let's call it like the basic or the standard version of us. Like the standard version isn't quite cutting it. So let's start first with like, what is the thing, the next level, the next goal, the next whatever that we're going for? I think that would be really helpful to start with. And then we want to craft this archetype. Okay. We want to put together like, okay, what is the version of you that needs to be activated to be the type of person that gets or does the thing that you're going for? All right. So here are some things that I would love for you to consider when you're coming up with this. And you can come back and you can write these down or, whatever you want to do. But here are the type of questions that I would love for you to consider when crafting this version of yourself. Who is she, right? Like maybe you already have a name. Maybe you already have an image of her. For me, when I think of this, I always think of like on Pinterest. Sometimes you scroll through Pinterest and I'm like, oh my gosh, this picture it's the vibe, like for me, it's more of a visual. It's more of a like, that's it. Right. Like, so for you, what is that? Who is this person? What motivates her? Like, I want you to start considering these questions. What motivates this version of you? How does she move throughout the world, right? Like, is she fast? Like, does she move super fast and confidently? Is she somebody who is more of like the slow and steady confidence? Is she somebody who, I don't know, I just put, how does she move? Like, I want you to really think about how this person walks through a room, how this person makes decisions, how she speaks to people, how she likes to be spoken to. How does she think about specific things? So like what are her thoughts and beliefs on money, on business, on relationships, on the ease of success, or what's available to her, or what her potential is? What is her vibe and an idea of life in general? What's her overall vibe? You know, like how does she dress? How does maybe she has a signature scent. How does she eat? What are her standards? How does she take care of herself? Okay. Like, I know there's like the healthy version of me who takes all of her supplements, is very aware and particular about the type of food that she eats and puts in her body. You know, like, that's not me all the time. Sometimes I wish it is, but on the weekends I don't. On the weekends I'm more of like fun Allie. So do you see what I'm saying? So like, you want to kind of think about it in that way and get clear on those specific things, and then go off, like go even more broad, even more specific if you want to. I think this would, you know, if you're going to be using this for your business, it would be really helpful to think about, like, how often does she show up in her stories? How does she show up in her stories? What type of content does she create? What are her prices? How does she feel about one-on-one offers or one-to-many offers, or the type of business that you have now? You know, like it's a funnel. No, it's a filter. We're creating this custom filter that's all parts of you, just a little bit tweaked. But when you shine light through it, when you shine or run a decision through it, it's going to come out differently than if you process it as that standard version of you, which is kind of cool, right? So here's one thing that I really want you to pay attention to and realize when we're curating this alter ego. This is you. Okay. We're not creating something outside of you, or like another version of somebody else or anything like that. Like, it's so important for you to understand that all of these traits, all of these things that is this person, that is this filter of this alter ego, she is in you. She is you. It's nothing outside of you. That's super important. And it's also very empowering, because it helps us to realize, or at least it's helped me to realize, that the people that I admire that aren't me and that I look like, and they're at, my alter ego can speak. But the people that I look up to, and then I'm like, oh man, I wish I was more like her in this way, or I wish I could be more like the way that she is about this thing, or whatever. I can activate those same attributes, that same vibe within me. It's not going to create the exact same thing because it's through me, but that's so beautiful. Like, that's actually such a gift. So I just want to reiterate, like, this isn't outside of us. This is all in us. She's in there already. She just needs to be called forward. Now, once you create this alter ego, now we want to be able to activate her, right? Like, this is the most important part. When you need her, we need to be able to call her forward, right? You need to be able to snap into her so that you can do the thing in her way, or, you know, whatever the situation is. So I made a list of different ways that I personally have done this myself or ways that I've heard other people doing this. These are like little activators. These are really easy things. All of these things I believe are free to do. None of them require money. I could have gone into more expensive ways to do this, but I thought I would keep this easy because I want this to be so actionable that you can do this at any time. So let's go through a list of ways to tap into this baddie version of you anytime you need to. So the first thing that I have on the list that I've done before, and I recently did again because I was talking on a podcast about how I've done this before and how it genuinely worked for me. But one way that you can do this is you can write a letter to yourself from the future. Okay. So I've done this in relationships, and that's the first time I ever did this was for when I was heartbroken and I was wanting to manifest my future boyfriend or, like a good man. I did this. I wrote a letter to myself from the future version of me who had that partner that I dreamed of, the one that was respectful and kind and handsome and all the things that I wanted in a dream partner. I wrote the letter to me like, hey, this is me. I'm, the version of you in your future. You met the guy. He's this. He makes you feel like this. He's, he looks like this and he's so great and blah, 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 blah. Go into all of this detail, and you can go and you can read this every single day, or you can just, like I did, put it in a drawer and forget about it. And listen, I did this, and months later, I kid you not, I met Chris. So this really does work. But I recently did this for business too, because again, I was talking about this on a podcast and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do this for business. I love to journal about business, but I haven't actually, I think I have written future letters, but it's been a minute. So anyway, I did that recently. And now I have this routine where it doesn't matter the time of day, but I sit down, I pray, kind of like get myself centered. And then I read this letter from the future version of me who is saying like, you did it. You hit these results. You've spoken on this stage. You've done this thing. You're this level of podcast, blah, blah, blah. And it's something that I read every day. And it just reminds me what I'm going for. And that, because you're reading it as if it's happened. So you start to feel the feelings that it's happened, which is what we're wanting to do. Like anytime you're wanting to manifest anything or create something that's not here yet, you got to feel the feelings now. So that's one really, really good way to activate this version of you is write yourself a letter from the future version of you who has done the things that you want, who's created the level of results or met the guy or woman or, whatever the thing is that you're wanting to call forward in whatever part of your life. The next thing that is proven to help activate that baddie, working out. So however you prefer to sweat, there's something about movement. There's something about sweating and pushing yourself physically that just makes you feel more empowered. So my preferred method of working out is some form of weightlifting and maybe a little bit of cardio, mostly weightlifting, but yours could be Pilates, it could be yoga, it doesn't matter, but that physical activity is a great way to activate whatever it is, right? Like you're just like, as you're working out, think of that version of you, like look yourself in the eye in the mirror and realize like, again, that person's you, and decide when you get done working out, boom, it's done, right? This is super helpful, I've found. Kind of on the same wavelength, going on a power walk or what I call a power drive. So, and you've heard of what do they call them? Hot girl walks, which is basically just like walking around, feeling empowered, maybe listening to music or some sort of whatever, I don't know, exactly what all that entails, but you can create, like, I think it would be a cool idea to create like a Baddie playlist, or whatever you want to call your alter ego. Create a playlist of songs that fit the vibe and the energy of this version of you. And then you can go on a walk, listen to that music. Like, that can be something that activates this version of you. I love doing this in the car. If it's too hot or it's too cold, it's the movement. I'm telling you, there's something to movement to just like, I guess it just moves your energy in general. And that's what we're wanting to do here when we're shifting from the standard version of us to another version of us. I've found that to be super helpful. For me, getting dressed for the day is very in line with my personal baddie. My personal baddie, not every day. Like she loves a good workout outfit too, and, chilling some days, but like, I don't know. Like if you follow me on Instagram, I love posting my outfits. I love getting ready for the day. Like something about that is activating for me, but that's my own personal baddie. So what's yours? Your personal baddie may feel like her most badass, confident, tapped in version without a stitch of makeup on. Like that's your thing. So this is going to look different for everybody. But for me, getting dressed for the day is like, that's an activator for me. Putting my makeup on, doing my hair, figuring out what the outfit of the day is, like that all is activating. Another way that you can do this too is taking a bath or a shower as an activation. I've heard that some people do this where while they're in the bath or while they're in the shower, they're kind of like picturing washing off any kind of like block, any kind of insecurity, anything that you just feel like is kind of a lingering funk. And then they visualize like when they step out of the shower, they step out of the bath, that boom, they're activated. Boom, they're like that alter ego or that version of themselves. So sometimes I will do this too, like especially if I'm in a funk and it cannot be a funky day, I will go take a bath or whatever. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, the second I step out of this bath, like I snap my fingers basically, like we're shifting out of the funk. We're shifting out of that heavy energy into something more light. And we're going to do the things that we need to do. Sexy time can be a great activator as well. Whether that's with yourself or with a partner, that can be an awesome activator. Another thing that I like to do for myself is I have Pinterest vision boards that of like this archetype for me, like different outfits, different, think of like a mood board, right? Like if you had to create, this actually could be a really fun activity for you just to like get super clear on this version of you. But you could create a board on Pinterest of images and clothes and things that are on the frequency and vibe of this person. So whenever you need to, or you forget, or you just need to like get into the feeling of it again, you can scroll through that board and it just it reminds you. So I have a few different of these boards that keep me motivated. And then the last thing that I have on this list, of course, would be something like meditating or visualizing. I've talked often about how I personally am not the best at meditating. I don't love meditating, but recently, what was it that got me into this? Oh, I know what it was. Okay. So you know how I said I have Tara Marino. I had Tara Marino on this podcast, which please go listen to our episode. It was a few episodes ago and it was so damn good. And you can hear her talk about the archetypes on there too. but I also was on hers. And that's when I told the story about the future letter to myself. And we were talking after we recorded that episode. And she was the one, she was like, you know what? I think I'm going to write a letter for my business. We should do it together. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we both did it, alone in our own respective homes and in our own time. And then she Voxered me. She was like, I am going to start doing this thing. I don't think she would care that I shared this here, but she was like, I'm going to, I'm going to read this for like 21 days straight and meditate on it and do this whole thing. Would you like to do it with me? And I was like, yeah. Okay. What are you doing? And basically she reads the letter and then she meditates for like 9-ish minutes and just like gets into the vibe and the energy and sees if she gets any inspired thoughts or downloads or nudges based on this future letter. So I've been doing that. I'm now, what was today? I think I'm 7 days in, which is the most that I have gone in a row, meditating and visualizing every single day. And it has been fantastic. So this is I just like the whole thing takes maybe 15, 20 minutes tops. And that's on the long end. But I like to do this in my podcast space because it's a tiny little closet. And on my floor, I've got some crystals and Palo Santo and some, I don't know, I just have cute vibey things. And I sit on the floor and I pull out my journal and I read the future letter and I pray. And then I set a timer for somewhere between 9 and 11 minutes. And I just meditate. And part of it, I visualize like as if these things are happening. And then I just let my mind be quiet to see if any inspired action type things come through, right? Like not trying to make anything happen, just being. And this has been a super powerful activator for me that I've been doing it for a week now, and I intend on doing it for at least 20 something days. So I'll report back on that, but it really doesn't matter, right? Like when we're thinking of ways to embody, activate, just like call forward this version of you that again is already within you. It can be anything. So don't get caught up on what the action is, right? Like I used to think that I had, in order for me to be the most successful version of myself, I needed to like journal every day or again, meditate every day. And that's not true. Sometimes you'll wake up and you're just like, you're already activated, and that's great. And we certainly don't want to make it to where in order for us to be quote powerful or productive or whatever, that we have to do jump through a bunch of hoops in order to be who we already are. So it might get to the point where you don't even need to do anything. You can just like decide and it's done. Like you may be able to do that right now, which why not? But if it's not that easy, there's of course this list of things to do to help you. So that's all that I have for you today. As I finish this, it is 2:22. Make a wish. And yeah, so if this was helpful for you, let me know. I would love to hear. Tag me in your stories if you listen and you want to share it. And let me know if you name your alter ego, what her name is, because I think that could be really fun. But until next time, I will see you here next week. Bye.